Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 15th day of July, halfway through the month now, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First graphic up, fire danger chart here, and really not too much, no extreme areas of fire danger on the chart here, at least for today. A couple areas there, southern slopes of the Brooks Range, high fire danger, maybe into the Koyukuk Valley there, down toward the Yukon, in toward the central interior, but not too bad. And then the highest area there was around Lake Minchumina, where it was probably into the very high category, and then the kind of more extensive high fire danger area there on the northwest side of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, pretty good everywhere else around the state. And from there, taking a look at the hazardous weather graphics, there are no watches, no warnings, no advisories anywhere around the state for the next 24 hours, maybe longer. And moving on to satellite imagery, you can see a lot of clear skies over the interior today. Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, Dillingham, clear sky, sunshine. Looks like a few clouds over toward King Sam and Igigik, and also on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, the lower cloud deck, and areas of fog. Cape Newenham, dense fog this afternoon, quarter-mile visibility, and a little bit of light rain or mist or thick dew. Gave them 1 to 2 hundredths of an inch in the last 12 hours. Otherwise, low clouds, fog, Pribilof Islands on up to St. Lawrence Island toward the Bering Strait, and then you clear back out over the Chukchi Sea. In fact, you can see a lot of clearing taking place up along the Arctic Ocean there, north slope, northeast interior. You can see the ice and the open water area, the thinner ice along the eastern Arctic coast, and of course the Chukchi Sea ice edge there. A little more obscured by the clouds, but you can still kind of make it out there east-southeast of Wrangel Island. Otherwise, Bering Sea pretty well socked in with clouds. A couple of systems, one pushing rain into the Adak area in the southwest Bering Sea, and high pressure in advance of that associated with the low cloud deck over the eastern Bering Sea. And then the system stands out quite vividly there west-southwest of the Queen Charlotte Islands, and the associated front with that bringing some rain into the central and southern panhandle. Nothing too heavy yet. Let's see, Sitka had about 6 hundredths of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours, while Petersburg had 1/100th. That's about as far north as the precipitation was reported. Otherwise, heaviest amounts, not all that heavy. Klawock and Ketchikan about 1/10 of an inch. They're just right on the outer edge of the main precipitation producing clouds there that are still off the coast or to the south. Also, showers breaking out over the Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range. During the day today, maybe some isolated thunderstorms, some of the taller clouds, but Eureka, about as far southwest as I saw the shower activity, probably maybe a little farther southwest, they had about 2 hundredths of an inch, kind of off and on light rain showers throughout the day today, mostly cloudy skies. Gulkana picked up 100th of an inch, but Tok River Valley had 2/10ths of an inch of precipitation, kind of the exception there. And temperatures rising into the mid-70s in the central interior over toward the Fairbanks area, and down into the Susitna Valley as well. And Kenai Peninsula, nice day over Bristol Bay. And rolling this through again, you can see the system southwest of the Queen Charlotte Islands not moving too rapidly, so the front will be washing out, or currently is washing out, as it spread the rain into the panhandle there. And then the high pressure ridge and the low clouds, fog, light wind conditions there along the west coast, eastern Bering Sea, but the winds pick up. St. Lawrence Island, tighter gradient there with a high to the south and lower pressure up over the Arctic Ocean. And Cape Lisburne, kind of a classic high wind pattern or gusty wind pattern for that area. They had a peak wind gust of about 50 miles per hour today. And St. Lawrence Island, about 30 miles an hour. Otherwise, Seward Peninsula, anywhere from 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts in the windier areas, as well as the western Brooks Range and the northwest interior. Otherwise, sunshine breaking out over south central Alaska. As I mentioned, temperatures rising in the lower to mid-70s, and clearing out for Kodiak Island. Weakening front there over the western Aleutians tonight. Kind of that high pressure ridge sharpening up a little bit there along the west coast of the main center, somewhere around the Fox Islands. and then extending right up into the Noatak Valley. So on the west side of that ridge, we have southwest flow, and that carrying remnants of the frontal moisture. One trough, you can see moisture, light rain, fog, and drizzle there, staying west of St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs, and then stays kind of cloudy, wet, and unsettled, breezy for the western Aleutians to about Adak possibly. Otherwise, light winds, low clouds, fog for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island should stay mostly clear, maybe some clouds on the east side, but kind of that west-northwest or that northwest flow should keep it mostly cloud-free, definitely dry, but winds will be light. And the interior, mostly fair, clearing, few variable clouds, diminishing showers, but lingering with that low over the eastern Brooks Range. And periods of light rain continue with that weak system, stalled out trough right over the southern southeast coast and dry to the north. And taking a look at tomorrow's forecast, showers and mostly cloudy central southern panhandle, and mostly sunny and warm. Looks like Sitna Valley, upper 70s to lower 80s. The forecast also in the Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon Valley, pulling back into the lower 80s and 70s. Much of the central interior with a lot of good sunshine. Sunny and warm, Kodiak Island. Could see some temperatures approaching 80 on the Kenai Peninsula as well. Copper River Basin. A little bit better chance of showers, especially up toward the Alaska Range, over toward the eastern interior, eastern Brooks Range. And some precipitation may make landfall. It'll be light, though, for the Yukon Delta coast on up to the northwest coast, extending back with that southwest flow and that ridge right over the southeast bearing. You can see a little bit windier there for the central Aleutians, and rain as well, but not quite making it to Atka Island. Light winds, maybe some clearing, but low clouds and fog more likely for the Pribilof Islands, Fox Islands, and any clearing will probably be on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And for Saturday, high pressure holding, still centered there and ridging up along the west coast, but only up to about the Yukon Delta coast. Westerly flow got those disturbances cutting eastward, kind of chopping the top of the ridge off. So it looks like clouds, showers move into the eastern Seward Peninsula, north of the Lotto Hills, maybe Norton Bay, and a little more extensive there in the southern slopes of the western central Brooks Range. Periods of light rain, fog, and drizzle, central Arctic coast north slope with some few showers to the east. And thunderstorm activity, temperatures 75 to 85. Interior valleys there could trigger some thunderstorm activity right on down to the Kenai Peninsula, Chugach Mountains in the afternoon, up into the Talkeetnas, Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range. Actually less of a chance of thunderstorm activity, showers there. It'll be a little bit farther to the west. Mostly sunny, Yakutat, and for the Panhandle, no change. Periods of rain, light rain or showers, cloudy skies, cool temperatures, central and southern areas, and that front brings rain into the central Aleutians out west with small craft advisory winds. Lows for tonight, 40s to mid-50s over the interior, mid-40s out over the Bering Sea, except lower 40s St. Lawrence Island. And for the highs tomorrow, upper 70s to lower, maybe even mid-80s there in the interior, lower 80s to Sitna Valley, 70s to near 80 in the Kenai Peninsula. Very nice 70s there for Bristol Bay. Lower 70s Kodiak Island, away from the coastline, mid to upper 70s quite possible. Lower 70s Northern Panhandle, lower 60s to the south. And for the lows Saturday morning, we're looking at upper 30s there for the central Arctic coast, and mid to upper 40s out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, lower 40s St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula, and lows right around 60 for the Fairbanks area, otherwise 50s everywhere else, upper 40s higher elevation Copper River Basin, and 50s, mid to upper 50s south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, lower to mid 50s for the Panhandle, mid 50s Kodiak Island. That'll be followed by highs on Saturday afternoon. Cooler for the southeast coast, mostly in the 60s, lower 60s, except the northern areas, north of Juneau, Skagway, Haines, possibly mid to upper 60s, trying to push 70. Lower 80s to Sitna Valley, Copper River Basin, lower 80s for the Tanana Valley, Yukon Flats over toward Eagle, and Kenai Peninsula 70s to near 80. Bristol Bay mid 70s, lower to mid 70s there, and to the Kuskokwim Valley. 40s along the central Arctic coast, but mid 60s on the east side with more southwest flow. 55 to 60 for your highs out over the Bering Sea, with the 60s over the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather Friday morning. Eastern Beaufort Sea Coast, North Slope, Central Eastern Brooks Range, Central Eastern Interior, all the way down into the Susitna-Matanuska Valley, Copper River Basin, VFR, some marginal VFR from the North Gulf Coast there, Prince William Sound, up across the Wrangell Mountains, Seyden and Besna, and then IFR, Central Arctic Coast, into the Northwest Interior, Seward Peninsula, Selawik, Kotzebue, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs, Fox Islands, Adak, west of Shemya, all IFR there along the Alaska Peninsula, southern Bristol Bay, marginal VFR, southwest interior, IFR, Montague Island, east side of Kodiak Island, and then across the southern panhandle. And moving on to the afternoon forecast. VFR, central eastern interior, all the way down. We've got some marginal VFR sort of receding over western Prince William Sound, but hanging in the southern sound there, southern Kenai Peninsula to about Cape St. Elias on the coast, and then southern panhandle, marginal VFR with IFR right along the coast of Prince of Wales Island, VFR Kodiak, and west coast, IFR, central western Arctic coast, same thing, Bering Sea, IFR, Aleutians, IFR, Bristol Bay marginal, Alaska Peninsula marginal VFR. And then for the Saturday morning outlook, we've got VFR, looks like central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and then marginal VFR, roughly from about, we'll say Wainwright down toward Point Lay, and then Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, Lisburne Hills, the Long Mountains, maybe IFR in the southern slopes, marginal northwest interior, and then some IFR with that south-southwest flow, southern Seward Peninsula to Norton Bay, St. Lawrence Island, and much of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, the exception being the Pribilofs, marginal VFR, but you're right on the edge of the IFR zone. Marginal VFR into Bristol Bay with a patch of IFR across the Alaska Peninsula. IFR, Gulf of Alaska, up to Montague Island, and just off the east coast of Kodiak Island, and still southern panhandle areas of IFR surrounded by a narrow area of marginal VFR, but the northern two-thirds or so looking VFR. And for the afternoon, Saturday, marginal VFR in areas of the Panhandle, up along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, east side of Kodiak Island, otherwise VFR in the interior, Bristol Bay, right up to the North Slope, Eastern Brooks Range, and then the IFR holding there, Northwest Coast, Kivalina to Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, Tin City, Southern Seward Peninsula, White Mountain, Nome, St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs, Eastern Aleutians, most of the Aleutians IFR, some marginal VFR there, say for Adak, Tamchitka, marginal VFR Alaska Peninsula, Nunivak Island, and for the passes for Friday morning, Anatuvik, or actually the entire day Friday, Anatuvik, Natigan, marginal VFR, and the Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, VFR, rainy VFR, windy VFR, Isabel, same forecast. Mentasta could start out marginal early, becoming VFR as the morning wears on through the afternoon. Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR, 2 VFR. Chilcoot and White, good VFR. Freezing levels, upper level ridge, western interior, signified by the 12,000 foot freezing levels there, sloping down to 8,000 feet toward the eastern border and the panhandle. And icing, really not a whole lot, just very isolated, moderate, possible, light to isolated, moderate rime or mixed icing, just catching, sliding into St. Lawrence Island, western St. Lawrence Island, far western Aleutians, just a chance, and maybe a little bit of significant icing of the light to isolated, moderate variety there for the central and especially southern southeast coast, none to the north, none over the interior expected. And the jet stream, good ridging there from, say, just northwest of Unimak Island, northeastward into the central interior there. And you can see the wind flow southwesterlies right up from the western Aleutians into the Bering Strait, coming back around to the north-northeast over the eastern interior into the Gulf of Alaska. Trough over the Panhandle, 9,000 feet, about the same pattern there. Southwest flow, 30 to 45 knots there, cutting it from the western Aleutians up into the northwest interior, and at 3,000 feet, same pattern, high pressure over the interior, trough way out west, southwest flow in between, up to 45 knots on the western Arctic coast, pretty light everywhere else. And for turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop there, Shelikof Strait to Kamishak Bay, mechanical turbulence off the Aleutian Range, western central Aleutians, St. Lawrence Island, up to the northwest coast.
Hi there, stargazers. Trace here. Summer nights are so relaxing, so when you're out listening to the cicadas, look for the summer triangle and its quirky star, Altair. Let's hit the skies around 10 p.m. facing east. There you'll see the 3 bright stars that make up the points of the summer triangle. The brightest being Vega and Lyra the Harp, the second brightest is Altair and Aquila the Eagle, and the third brightest, Deneb, marks the tail of Cygnus the Swan. Altair is a yellow-white main sequence star. Our sun is main sequence too, but unlike the sun, Altair rotates rapidly once every 9 hours. That makes the star bulge at the equator like an M&M. In 2006, astronomers were able to image Altair's surface directly. At that time, the only other star we'd done that to was the sun. The sky is full of discoveries, isn't it? Keep looking up.
The Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge is a refuge in Alaska. It's the 3rd largest refuge in the National Wildlife Refuge System. North of Fairbanks, it's a vast ecosystem of wetlands. What drives this refuge are natural forces of fire, ice, and water.
The Yukon Flats has got a really interesting history. Back in the late 50s, early 1960s, there was a proposal to dam the Yukon River down by Rampart, which is downstream of the Yukon Flats. And it was a hydroelectric proposal. And so in order to assess the merits of that proposal, people got together because they were a little bit concerned about what the impacts might be on the Yukon Flats, the habitat, and all the people living within the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's quite a few people living within the refuge. We have 7 villages. So in order to figure out how special the Yukon Flats was, the Fish and Wildlife Service banded over 40,000 ducks within the Yukon Flats. And using the band return information, they found out that those ducks were using 45 of the 50 lower 48 states. They were using 7 foreign countries, and they were using most of the provinces over in Canada, as well as all the major flyways down in the lower 48. And so that identified that the Yukon Flats was a special breeding area, and that information, along with a lot of other public information that was gathered during that whole process, really ensured that the dam never did go in, and thus the habitat was preserved.
So what that did is it really highlighted the national importance of this area and how important conserving this particular area is for conserving many other natural areas in the lower 48 and even across the continent.
To protect the Yukon Flats Refuge because we have responsibility towards our future generations to leave land protected in the state that it is now. The Yukon Flats is a wild place. The ecosystem is intact and functioning, and you can't find that very many places in the rest of the U.S.
The Yukon Flats Refuge is among the most important places for ducks. So each spring, millions of ducks, and in addition to shorebirds and geese, raptors and loons, they all fly to the refuge to nest and rear their young. And the reason they are attracted to this area is because it has really enriched wetlands. There are lots of nutrients in the wetlands that provide a lot of food for the growing young.
We also have a lot of predator, prey species like bears and black bears, grizzly bears, wolves. We also have a lot of moose and fur bearers that use the refuge. So overall, there's just a great diversity of both upland, lowland, and migratory bird species that use the refuge.
Most people know the Flats as a duck nursery, and that was one of the main purposes that was designed for, but a lot of recent research over the last decade has really illustrated how important it is to a variety of native endemic fish species for subsistence and recreational and commercial fisheries throughout the entire Yukon River Basin and out to supporting commercial fisheries out to the Bering Sea as well. So it supports a variety of different whitefish and salmon species, the northern pike, a little bit of everything that people rely on as cultural identities, but also for subsistence resources and where people go to recreate and enjoy being outside.
The type of recreation that you're going to find on Yukon Flats Refuge is very primitive. And what that often does is it gives people a complete break from some of the stresses of today's world. There are no cell phone towers out there. There are no roads. There are no trails. So any type of recreation that people have is entirely natural. The lands and waters within the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge are open to the public to enjoy. And that's a really important tenet upon which the United States is built.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis, not much different from yesterday. Still in close to the coastline there, from about Wainwright eastward, and then it thins out over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island, and then sea ice free in Mackenzie River Bay, and also Point Ley and the Bering Strait up to the north there in the southern Chukchi Sea. Sea ice free as well, and no big changes expected in the sea ice over the next few days. Going to the coastal water forecast for the Panhandle, small craft advisories that's due to that system southwest of Queen Charlotte Island's main low center. So we're looking at east-southeast winds, 25 knots, 8-foot seas there along the south coast, lightening to east at 20 knots on the north coast, and then becoming west-northwest at 10 knots there for the eastern North Gulf Coast to Yakutat. Inside waters, northern and central, variable winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Clarence Strait, southeast winds at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. For Saturday, inside waters, variable winds at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. And central coast, same thing, variable winds at 10 knots with 4-foot seas. South coast, east at 15 knots, seas 5 feet. And the north coast, looking at southeast winds at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. And moving on to, let's see, that's not correct there. South Central Alaska on Saturday, Prince William Sound, variable winds at 10 knots, as well as the North Gulf Coast, variable winds at 10 knots. Cook Inlet, light south to southwest breeze at 10 knots with 3-foot seas. Barren Island, southwest 15 knots. And Kamishak Bay, west winds at 15 knots, seas only 3 feet. And for the let's see, Kodiak Island for tomorrow, west-southwest winds at 20 knots, 4 to 5-foot seas. And from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, a little more northwesterly, 20 knots there. The Alaska Peninsula, Bering Sea side, variable at 10 knots with 2-foot seas, and west 15 knots for the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Same thing in Bristol Bay tomorrow, westerlies at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Outlook for Saturday, east side of Kodiak, variable winds, light and variable, 10 knots, seas down there under 5 feet, call it 3 feet. Shelikof Strait southwest of 15, 4-foot seas. And from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southwest at 15, and then Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, we're looking at westerlies at 15 knots. A little bit more of a breeze on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, northerlies at 20 knots. Bristol Bay back down to 15 out of the west. Fox Islands, variable winds at 10 knots tomorrow, and south to southeast winds, only 15 to 20 knots, Adak and Atka. Small craft advisories, Amchitka to Shemya, south to southwest, 25 knots. And for Saturday, south to southwest winds, 20 knots for the western Aleutian. Small craft advisories for Adak, Atka, Unmak Island, and Unalaska Island. For south winds running 25 to 30 knots with seas 4 to 8 feet. And let's see, for the area, Yukon Delta Coast, light winds at 10 knots, 2-foot seas, and St. Matthew Island, light variable winds at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. Same thing for the Pribilos, variable winds at 10 knots, 2-foot seas due to high pressure there. Southwest winds 25 for St. Lawrence Island, much like today, and the Kuskokwim Delta Coast northwest at 15. And going to, let's see, the Arctic coast for Saturday, still southwest, but not too bad, coming down a little bit there. St. Matthew Island south at 20. Small current advisories though for the Pribilof Island, south 25, seas 8 feet. But for St. Lawrence Island into Norton Sound, winds will be southwest at about 20 knots, seas running 5 to 6 feet. And south of Nunivak Island, southwest at 15. Yukon Delta Coast, southeast at 20. And for Saturday, for the Arctic coast, east side, south to southeast breeze at 10 knots. Central coast, pick it up to 20 knots from the south. And then small current advisories for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Cape Thompson, where they'll be south at 25 knots. Cape Thompson to Wales, southwest 25 knots, seas 8 feet. For tonight, high pressure along the west coast, light winds, low clouds and fog. Some of that lower cloud deck moving inland a ways over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, Norton Sound, and maybe the northwest interior. Isolated showers with that weak low up over the eastern Brooks Range. Periods of light rain central and southern southeast coast. And that continues through tomorrow, kind of cloudy, showery there, mainly the southern half of the Panhandle. Breezy and wet from the western central Aleutians right up to the northwest coast. And scattered showers, risk of an isolated thunderstorm. Again on Saturday, but high temperatures, 70s, lower 80s, central interior into the Madanuska-Susitna Valley. Quite warm for Kodiak Island, mostly clear skies as well.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.